In January 2017, a giant 2-mile-long crack was found in the Arizona desert. And guess what? This wasn't the weirdest thing we've found in Arizona. And it's not even the weirdest thing we've found in the desert just this past month. From alien hands and purple orbs, through to satellite codes and a radioactive baby. This is our list of the 10 strangest things found in the desert. Number 10. The Peruvian Hand. So, are you wondering what kind of strange item could possibly outdo the discovery of a 2-mile crack in the desert? Well, your answer is this thing. Unearthed in January 2017 within a Peruvian desert cave, this giant 3-fingered hand was allegedly discovered alongside an elongated human skull in an undisclosed location somewhere near the city of Cusco. According to paranormal researcher/tour guide Brian Forster, who saw the hand before it was passed to an unnamed research group, the prevailing thought is that this hand does not belong to a human, because it has 6 bones in each finger compared to our 3. X-rays have reportedly confirmed these discoveries as genuine biological objects and not elaborate fakes, with radiocarbon dating underway to determine exactly when this thing existed. At 9. An ancient stash. In 2008, archaeologists working in the Chinese region of the Gobi Desert discovered a grave which was over 2,700 years old. Inside, the team found equestrian equipment, archery bows, and a strange bag of medicinal herbs. Herbs which gave off a pungent and somewhat familiar smell. The strange bag was taken back to the laboratory in order to confirm what everyone already knew, but all pretended at the time to not have any experience with. They had stumbled upon the world's oldest stash of marijuana. The man who was buried in the tomb with his tokables was apparently quite rich, with his harp and makeup bag indicating he may have been some form of shaman. And before anyone asks, no, these herbs have not been used by anyone since their discovery, with the entire stash kept on display at the Turpan Museum in China, right next to Genghis Khan's crack pipe and Marco Polo's copy of Pineapple Express. At 8. Chinese Whispers. Another entry from the Gobi Desert concerns these strange markings, which has been viewable via Google Earth since back in 2011. All sorts of theories have been put forward, with the most shocking claiming that they are in fact layouts of US cities that are being used for target practice. But the most believable theory comes from Jonathan Hill of Arizona State University's Mars Space Flight Facility, who claims these symbols are almost identical to those used by the United States in the 1960s, and that their true purpose is the calibration of spy satellites. In at 7, desert glass. This piece of fancy neckwear once belonged to King Tutankhamun of Egypt. But what's interesting about it is the origin of the yellow-green jewel in the center. Tests conducted have confirmed that the glass it was carved from was produced well before the earliest Egyptian civilization is known to have existed. So how did King Tut get his tiny, incestually deformed hands on it? Well, with a bit of genius-level detective work, archaeologists have deduced that it probably was produced naturally in an area in the Sahara Desert. In this region, you'll find little blocks of glass scattered throughout the sand, and the only plausible events which are hot enough to melt sand into glass in this way are atomic explosions, meteor strikes, and hot air bursts, which is where a meteor explodes in the atmosphere and its heat is the only thing that strikes the ground. No impact crater has ever been discovered in this area, and it's probably a safe bet to say the Egyptians didn't have nuclear capability, so a hot air burst seems most likely. But if not, then we're stumped, because nothing else that we know of can create that kind of heat. At least, nothing terrestrial. 6. The radioactive baby. For once, a clickbait title is actually going to live up to its billing. But unfortunately, this story has a far from happy ending. On November 30th, 2016, workers from a land management company were inspecting a cave in Australia's remote Maralinga region when they discovered an infant skeleton wrapped in vegetation and human hair. According to a respected Aboriginal leader from the region, the child died after being exposed to radiation. 50 years ago, British scientists tested atomic weaponry here, detonating 7 devices in total. But this area was also the home to Aboriginal tribes. And while the Brits did make an effort to move most of them to safety, many remained and were exposed to severe radiation fallout. Scores of Aboriginal babies have been born with severe deformations in the years since, with a paltry $13.5 million in compensation paid in 1994. I think being hit by 7 atomic bombs warrants a little more than the taxes paid on a Mega Millions jackpot, don't you? In at 5, the Arizona Orbs. Geraldine Vargas and her husband were wandering around the Arizona desert back in 2013 when they stumbled upon this crazy business. Literally thousands of these gooey purple orbs covered a small patch of desert in the middle of nowhere. So understandably, to find out what they were, Mrs. Vargas gave one of them a good old squeeze. A watery substance spurted out when she did, and Mrs. Vargas described them as feeling smooth yet gelatinous, which makes them sound a lot like my ex-wife Karen. However, unlike that home-wrecking skank, these eggs stuck around. Experts have speculated that they may be a form of slimy mold or jelly fungus, but so far we've yet to confirm what they are or where they came from. At number 4, the entire Iraqi Air Force. When the ill-advised and criminal invasion of Iraq took place in 2003, one of the things that surprised everyone was the lack of Iraqi aircraft faced by the Western powers. The US military knew for sure that Saddam's forces contained several fearsome air squadrons. So where the heck were they? It turns out they were buried in the desert the whole time. As this photograph of a bunch of bemused American servicemen surrounding a submerged fighter jet shows. In total, there were 30 to 40 attack jets found beneath the Iraqi desert. Oh, Saddam, you silly goose! Planes go in the sky, not on the ground. Ish, no wonder he lost. At 3, a 25-foot-tall naked Lego lady. Yeah, the title sums it up pretty neatly. In the 1970s, a group of hippies formed an art colony in southern Nevada. Then, in the 1980s, a group of Belgian hippies came along and formed an open-air art installation, which is today known as the Goodwell Open Air Museum. Among their exhibits, which you'll find in a spot just east of Death Valley, include this piece called Lady Desert, the Venus of Nevada, which was made out of cinder blocks by Dr. Hugo Herrmann in 1992. So, if you've ever been wondering why it's taking 2 months to get an appointment with your local doctor, now you know. At 2, E.T. and Pac-Man. Back in 1983, the Atari video game company was not having a good time. They just released a new version of Pac-Man which critics hated, and this followed the biggest commercial failure in video game history. A video game project mired in so many glitches and script changes that the end product, Atari, literally buried in the desert. Initially, this was denied by Atari, but in 2014, an excavation at a site near Alamogordo, New Mexico, discovered hundreds of thousands of video game cartridges. 1,300 of the cartridges were taken before the site was refilled, and over $100,000 has been raised through the sale of these historically significant items in the 3 years since. And at number 1, the Fly Geyser. Our last entry was not so much discovered in the desert, but created. Take a look at this little oddity and try and guess what the heck's going on here. A small, man-made geothermal geyser found in Washoe County, Nevada, It was made in 1967 when a team of well drillers left their hole unplugged, which is never a good idea. And as the geyser continued to spurt, it deposited minerals around the opening, with these minerals gradually forming over half a decade to form this alien tumor/melted popsicle thing. Its unusual coloring is caused by thermophilic algae, and although these images make it look pretty big, the fly geyser is only about 5 feet tall and 12 feet wide. Is it wrong that I really want to lick it? And that's our list. But if you're interested in exploring strange occurrences similar to the ancient Egyptian explosion we mentioned, then stick around and watch our recent video on 7 unexplained mysterious events.